The moderator.
Good morning. The assembly will now come to order. Let us pray. Creator, we give you thanks today for life, for our lives. We give you thanks for this gathering. We give you thanks for your wisdom, your guidance, your Holy Spirit as our friend, as our comforter, as our guide. We ask you your blessing on our meeting today. It may be according to your will. In Jesus' name, amen. So constitute us, O Lord, in this court of your church, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So we're going down to the business committee will now come up.
Good morning, Crieff. And good morning to those that are following us online through the live streaming services. It's nice that people are up early and joining us for the Sederunt. We have a couple of slight changes to the agenda this morning. We will begin as we hear from the committee on terms of reference. And then back by popular demand, we'll hear from the from the Pension and Benefits Board, perhaps even for the last time. Following that report, we will revert back to our regular schedule, which will then be followed by the theological colleges. That's our report, moderator.
We're calling the committee on the terms of reference. Ann Phillips. Oh, a friend.
Moderator, I present the report of the Committee on Terms of Reference and move that the report be adopted as a whole. This is seconded by Colin Cross from the Presbyterian of Kamloops.
Any questions?
Okay, all right. Sorry. The recommendation for the first one regarding the Presbyterian of Western Hong Kong is that the terms of reference for the special committee of the 2023 General Assembly be reference number 1 2023 Presbytery of Western Hancock corrective case be adopted. Do you want me to read it? They're not ready? Okay. All right, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to read it to you. The commission is established under the authority of the Book of Forms, section 290, having all the powers of the General Assembly within its terms of reference. All parties shall be made aware that the judgment of the commission is final and must be obeyed. Book of Forms, section 290.4. The procedures and actions of the commission shall be consistent with the laws of the Presbyterian Church in Canada, in particular, legislation regarding the conduct of a corrective case, Book of Forms 381, and the principles of procedural fairness. The commission shall be made up of 5 members of the Presbyterian Church in Canada, with at least 2 of them being fluent in Korean and English. The commission shall be given authority to call for, confirm, and examine the judicial record, Book of Forms, section 378, and any other records it deems to be relevant. The commission shall be empowered to review and comment on the process and procedures followed by the Presbytery of Western Hancock and the Synod of British Columbia to arrive at its decision. The commission shall be empowered to call before it by citation witnesses on behalf of the complainant and the respondent presbytery. The commission shall meet expeditiously and after its review and judgment bring the matters to a conclusion with due regard for the best interest of all concerned and for the peace and harmony of the Church of Jesus Christ. Reasonable expenses for members of the commission to carry out their work shall be reimbursed. The commission shall report its action to the 2024 General Assembly and shall use, insofar as is possible and appropriate, the following framework: preamble, terms of reference, membership procedures, findings, analysis, decision, and judgment, pastoral comment. The committee shall be supported by the Reverend Victor Kim, Principal Clerk, and Ms. Terry Lee Hamilton. That's the recommendation.
Is there any discussion? Any questions? Ready to vote? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
The second recommendation is that the terms of reference for the special committee of the 2023 General Assembly, reference number 2, 2023, Presbytery of Edmonton Lakeland disciplinary case, be adopted as follows. The commission is established under the authority of the Book of Forms, section 290, having all the powers of the General Assembly within its terms of reference. All parties shall be made aware that the judgment of the commission is final and must be obeyed, Book of Forms, section 290.4. The procedures and actions of the commission shall be consistent with the laws of the Presbyterian Church in Canada, in particular legislation regarding the conduct of a corrective case, Book of Forms 381, and the principles of procedural fairness. The commission shall be made up of 5 members of the Presbyterian Church in Canada. The commission shall be given authority to call for, confirm, and examine the judicial record, Book of Forms, section 378, and any other records it deems to be relevant. The commission shall be empowered to review and comment on the process and procedures followed by the Presbytery of Edmonton Lakeland to arrive at its decision. The commission shall be empowered to call before it by citation witnesses on behalf of the complainant and the respondent presbytery. The commission shall meet expeditiously and after its review and judgment bring the matters to a conclusion with due regard for the best interest of all concerned and for the peace and harmony of the Church of Jesus Christ. Reasonable expenses for the members of the commission to carry out their work shall be reimbursed according to provided guidelines. The commission shall report its action to the 2024 General Assembly and shall use, insofar as possible and appropriate, the following framework: preamble, terms of reference, membership, procedures, findings, analysis, decision and judgment, and pastoral comment. The commission shall be supported by the Reverend Victor Kim, Principal Clerk, and Ms. Terry Lee Hamilton.
Is there any questions? Oh, one question.
It's not to the motion, it's just where in the report is this? I remember reading this, but we nobody at our table can find it.
Moderator, this is a report that comes up out of the General Assembly. The Committee on Terms of Reference was established at the General Assembly, so it's not in the reports on PCBiz. That's why it's being read now.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
The report as a whole.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Vin. Corey. Pension and benefits. Corey Stewart.
Good morning. Moderator, first I would like to remind the court that the recommendations in this report are moved by Donald Walcott and seconded by Neil Ellis. The first recommendation is that the action of the Pension and Benefits Board in the administration of pension benefits be sustained.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Second recommendation is that a cost of living increase of 2% be granted to pensions in payment for at least 1 year as of January 1st, 2024.
Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Recommendation number 3, that effective January 1st, 2024, the existing pre-retirement frozen pensions be increased by 50% of the Consumer Price Index according to the above scale.
Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? It carries.
Recommendation number 4, that the above sections of the Constitution of the Pension Plan of the Presbyterian Church in Canada be amended as defined above, effective January 1st, 2024.
Mike 1?
Thank you, moderator. And thank you very much to, Jared Miller, Niagara. Someday I will remember to do that when I actually come to the microphone for the first time. Thank you very much for walking us through each of those steps. And with your leave, moderator, I have just a couple of questions. Firstly, as someone who started ministry in 2011, with 2012 being my first full pensionable year, how do these changes affect my pension?
She is, yeah. So you started, I can't tell you exactly.
Sure. Ballpark.
How it affects your pension. However, the calculation of your pension credits was frozen as of 2012. So you earned 1.5% of your pensionable earnings towards your pension. And each year that was not indexed for inflation. So recommendation number 3, what it seeks to do is provide 50% of the consumer price index during those years that the pension calculation was frozen.
Sure. So ballpark, like higher, lower, like is this like
Oh, it would be higher.
okay, perfect. So
Yeah.
fantastic. That's what I wanted to know. So so second question, are there way, what is the downside? Why did we set it at the number that we set it at rather than a higher or a lower number?
It was solely an attempt to balance providing some cost of living increase to the pension credits, but balancing that with fiscal prudence to maintain the stability of the pension plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are there downsides for those of us who started? Or maybe you can say ballpark. What are the expectations around the what are the challenge? What are the things that those of us who started ministry in 2012 should be aware of vis-a-vis the long-term stability of the pension plan?
The pension plan currently is in quite good shape, and the pension board, the pension office, and the actual actuaries who we engage have been very diligent in forecasting, to the extent possible, the financial performance of the pension plan, and to attempt to the best of our ability to ensure that it is stable for a long time into the future.
So for those of us who are wondering, I mean, there is not insignificant conversation, moderator, around my particular cohort as to the long-term. I mean, I understand that the pension benefits board has done fantastic work, and thank you very much for being so diligent. And there's a lot of actuarial detail in the report that I'm not qualified to speak to or even comment on. But the question that a number of people in my cohort seem to be concerned about is is there a reasonable expectation that in 30 years, when I get to my 95-point thing on the pension report that I get every quarter or whatever, however often it comes, is there a reasonable expectation that there will be a pension in 30 years for me to access? Or if not, what advice does the Pension and Benefits Board have for those of us who are wondering whether the pension will be not solvent in 5 years or 10 years, but 30 years?
Okay, I'll answer your first question. Absolutely.
Okay, so
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, fantastic. So
Yes.
okay, that's so. Thank you very much for walking us through all. That was the reason I wanted. I wanted to, and so I
Yes.
apologize.
Oh, no.
Thank you very much for walking us through all that. It's a living question that a number of us have, and we're trying to suss out all of what this means. So thank you very much for taking the time to walk us through all that.
Yeah, we do feel very confident that there will be a pension plan available for pensioners a very long time into the future.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jared, are you worried about your Bitcoin investments?
Any further questions? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Okay, I just want to, can I just say one final thing? And then the report as a whole, of course. Okay. Finally, moderator, if I may, I want to gratefully acknowledge the excellent work of my colleagues on the Pension and Benefit Board and the staff of the Pension and Benefit Office. And also, moderator, I want to take the opportunity to thank the commissioners present for your attention to the Pension and Benefit Board report in all 3 pieces. And also for the questions. I do appreciate it. And I do want to thank the entire church for the opportunity just served the Pension and Benefit Board the last 6 years. I've enjoyed the work, and it's been a blessing in my life. So I've truly enjoyed doing this work on behalf of the church. Thank you. Moderator, the report as a whole is moved and seconded.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. And thank you, Corey, for your service as convener of this committee. God bless you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right. So moving on to the theological colleges, starting with Knox. We'll consider the reports of, at this time, the governing board of Knox College. The report is introduced by the board, convener of the board, Randall Phillips. And accompanied by Ernest.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning, everyone. My name is Randall Phillips, and I currently serve as convener of the Board of Governors of Knox College. And we'd like to present our report. I'd like to say, though, that the last year has been a very, very busy one for the college, but also a very successful one. At the last General Assembly, you approved the appointment of Reverend Dr. Ernest Van Eck to be our new principal. And I'm very pleased that Ernest is with us today to present our report. Ernest, maybe I could turn it over to you for the highlights.
Thank you, Randall, and good morning, everybody. Moderator, a brief summary of our report that was submitted for the General Assembly. Knox College's core mandate is to serve the congregations and presbyteries of the Presbyterian Church in Canada by educating, equipping, and empowering followers of Jesus in the Reformed tradition for visionary, Christ-centered leadership that is faithful and prophetic. In addition to its core mandate of educating ministers, Knox College also educates people of faith for spiritual care and psychotherapy, Christian education, seminary teaching and scholarship, ministries of service and development, and general foundational theological knowledge for lay people. In 2019, the Board of Governors adopted 5 strategic priorities for Knox College, and 2 of these strategies are currently in focus. The first is congregational vitality and growth. That is equipping churches in the Reformed tradition to engage their communities, grow and plant new churches. And second, spiritual and mental health, helping professionals and churches to respond to the increasing spiritual and mental health needs in our society. To energize congregations towards vitality and growth, we are in the final stages of developing a new MDiv that reflects the current and expected future realities of post-Christendom in Canada within the Reformed theological framework. The new restructured MDiv will especially make provision for more theological field education and will be presented 66% online, the first and the second year. To respond to the increasing spiritual and mental health needs in our society, we have removed the enrollment cap on our very successful MPS program, made a joint faculty appointment with Ecumenical College to assist with teaching and research in the program, the Reverend Dr. Glenn McCullough, also a PCC minister, and this is a first for the Theological School, Toronto School of Theology, and repositioned the previous administrative faculty position of Director of Experimental Learning and Spiritual Care as a tenured faculty position. We are also embarking on 2 new initiatives relating to the strategies of congregational vitality and growth and spiritual and mental health. Randall Phillips, our governor of the board, will say something more about these two initiatives after this brief summary and before we move our recommendation. Our 2023 graduation ceremony took place on Saturday, 27 May, during which we conferred 54 degrees, certificates and diplomas to 34 Knox students. The Reverend Dr. Peter Bush received an honorary doctorate in recognition of his long-standing faithful and creative ministry and service to the church and community, and Mrs. Laurie Ransom was our guest speaker. I think we can give Reverend Dr. Bush a hand for this. It was our privilege, Peter. Last academic year, faculty members have published 4 books. Dr. Angela Smith has been promoted to associate professor. And we are currently busy with 2 new searches. First, Professor of Pastoral and Intercultural Theology, that is nearly finished. And also the Ewer Chair of Practice and Ministry and Faith Formation, focusing on diaconal training and homiletics. In the past academic year, Knox has enrolled a total of 120 students in degree programs. The current number for 2023-24 is 134 students. We also have an increase in our MDiv enrollment, and we are very happy about that. To attract more PhD students, we will soon announce an attractive new PhD scholarship program that will enable students to work full-time on their PhDs and finish it in 3 years. For the next academic year, we'll have in-person classes on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, with our chapel services on Tuesdays and community lunches on Wednesdays. Finally, moderator, the sale of Knox College properties to the University of Toronto was concluded on March 1, 2023. This sale now frees Knox from the responsibility of owning and operating the building, and especially from the obligation of deferred maintenance costs. With this sale behind us, we can now focus on our efforts and resources on our programs and mission, and to continue to offer advanced theological education over the long term. With this sale, we have ensured a strong future for theological education for the Presbyterian Church in Canada.
Thank you, Ernest. Prior to presenting our recommendations, I'd like to take a moment to update you on a couple of recent and very important developments that occurred after we submitted our report to the General Assembly. The first is that Knox College will be opening a new counseling center on the campus of the University of Toronto. As you know, we've been seeing very rapid growth in our Master of Pastoral Studies program in spiritual care and psychotherapy. At the same time, there is tremendous need on campus and in the local community for counseling services, and our students in the MPS program are perfectly placed to provide this counseling. But opening the center will have another important benefit for the MPS program, because it will provide more opportunities to place our students for experiential learning and allow us to increase the number of students that we can accept into the MPS program. So it's a win all around. We expect to open the center next year. The second development is an important one for our church. As you know, we're facing a number of challenges together. One of them is with pulpit vacancies, for example. Today we have well over 200 churches that have no minister and aren't in a position to look for one. This is putting enormous pressure on our ministers to play multiple roles in supporting churches without ministers, and pressure on lay people to lead worship and other activities that many of them weren't trained to do. To help respond to these challenges, our Board of Governors has approved a new lifelong learning program at Knox College. The focus of this program will be to provide the resources and skills and networking to ministers and lay leaders that they need to survive and thrive in this new world that our church is facing. In introducing the lifelong learning program at Knox College, we hope to collaborate with the National Church, with Presbyterian College, and with St. Andrew's Hall to bring the best resources and training to you. I'm pleased to let you know that Reverend John Borthwick will be joining us as our new Director of Lifelong Learning to shape and launch the new program. And John is with us here at the General Assembly. So if you'd like to know more about the lifelong learning program, or if you have suggestions about how it can best help you, please see John. I hope that's okay with you. Ernest or me. The new program will be launched in the coming months and will provide more information closer to the time. Ernest?
Thank you, Randall. Moderator, the recommendations of Knox College Governing Board will be moved by Brian Fraser and seconded by John Borthwick. He's already working. Recommendation 1 is the following: that the Reverend Dr. Angela Schmidt be granted tenure as Director of Experiential Learning and Associate Professor of Spiritual Care. Moved and seconded, Moderator.
Are there any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We have a number 3. Will you speak?
Sorry, moderator. I just wanted to speak in favor of this recommendation as a student of Knox College. I was on the,
Can you?
Gord Brown London Presbyterian. Sorry. I was on the student advisory committee that interviewed Dr. Schmidt when she first came to Knox, and representing the advanced degree students. And I'm very pleased to speak to this recommendation as her career has unfolded and tenure is on the table. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
Moderator, this then concludes the report of the Board of Knox College. The motion to adopt the report as a whole is moved and seconded.
Any comments? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you. So moving on to St. Andrew's Hall, asking Jean Morris as convener to come forward. And Ross Lockhart.
Moderator, as convener of the Board of St. Andrew's Hall, it is a pleasure to present the report on behalf of St. Andrew's Hall and Vancouver School of Theology, where we exercise our charter from the province of British Columbia to grant degrees in theology. St. Andrew's Hall is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. Since 1955, St. Andrew's Hall has been the Presbyterian presence on the University of British Columbia campus. Today, the Board of St. Andrew's Hall is leading the Hall through this post-pandemic moment according to our 5-year strategic plan. Our vision is that we are called to discern and equip the future church that God is bringing. Our mission is that St. Andrew's Hall educates and equips missional leaders through teaching, hospitality, and witness for Christ's Church of tomorrow, today. Since 1979, St. Andrew's Hall has worked with the Vancouver School of Theology to help prepare Presbyterian leaders for ministry in the church and the academy. St. Andrew's Hall has 3 professors seconded to teach at VST: Ross Lockhart as Professor of Mission Studies, Richard Topping as Professor of Studies in the Reformed Tradition, and Rebecca Simpson as Director of Presbyterian Formation. Moderator, we bring greetings from Richard Topping, President and Vice Chancellor of the Vancouver School of Theology, and note that Rebecca Simpson is present with the Assembly. VST is committed to preparing thoughtful, engaged, and generous leaders for congregational ministry. The changing context of the church in our time calls for leaders who are able to adapt and are equipped to serve in congregations. Congregational leaders need to know how to minister in an interreligious society with Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, as well as having excellent field education experiences that are centered in congregational life. Programs are designed to provide education to meet these needs. Strength and vitality of congregations matter in teaching and learning at VST. This year, we celebrate 5 Presbyterian Church in Canada graduates from VST and look forward to the impact of their ministries within the Presbyterian Church in Canada. Over the last decade, St. Andrew's Hall has also invested in equipping congregations and their leaders, teaching and ruling elders, to engage in effective mission and witness in an increasingly secular and pluralistic Canadian context through the Centre for Missional Leadership. Guest preaching, session presbytery retreats, the certificate program in missional leadership, Gooder Scholars Program, Pastor in Residence, and church planting equipping have helped bless the Presbyterian Church in Canada and its leaders. In addition, CML has published 6 monographs and many chapters offering resources for both church and academy. Moderator, you are always welcome at St. Andrew's Hall. As a friend of St. Andrew's Hall and a graduate of VST, we hope you will visit during your moderatorial year so that you can experience again the vitality of the community and share your wisdom and experience.
Thank you.
I now invite our Dean, Ross Lockhart, to share more information with you about St. Andrew's Hall.
Moderator, in addition to graduate theological education through Vancouver School of Theology and equipping of teaching and ruling elders through the Centre for Missional Leadership, St. Andrew's Hall places a great emphasis upon building Christian community in the heart of one of Canada's most important universities in order to offer a credible witness to the gospel. We are well served by those who work in our housing, facilities, and finance offices that support our 93-unit residence that includes full-time students at the University of British Columbia and associated theological colleges. Over 200 people of all ages call St. Andrew's Hall home every year, including families in our 30 townhouse units. All are ministered to by our chaplain, Reverend Sumarmi Gobel, who offers weekly worship, hosts Wednesday night soup gatherings, and offers Bible study and the Alpha program, as well as mental health ministry support. And she also represents the Presbyterian Church in Canada throughout the UBC Ecumenical and Interfaith chaplaincy. Sharing life together as Christians in residence is a powerful witness to the gospel as we welcome students from around the world, some of whom come from places where Christians experience persecution and now can practice their faith openly in Canada for the first time. To that end, the Board of St. Andrew's Hall has invested significant financial resources in this past year according to our strategic plan, including a total replacement of furniture in our residence rooms and the addition of a second shower in each quad unit. This was accomplished without needing to fundraise, for funds have been carefully managed and stewarded over many years for the ongoing care of our property. As St. Andrew's Hall engages in its mission to educate and equip missional leaders through teaching, hospitality, and witness for Christ's Church of tomorrow today, We are grateful to the General Assembly for appointing our board that wisely stewards the resources and casts the vision of our ministry. And this year, as we welcome 3 new board members, soon to be appointed by the Assembly, we say goodbye to those completing their terms, including the Reverend Dr. Jean Morris, who is currently serving as convener, Mr. Stephen Roche, who is currently serving as our treasurer, and Reverend John Pang. I would like to thank all 3 for their contributions to the ministry of St. Andrew's Hall and their ongoing support of our vision and our mission. Finally, as we look towards the future, we give God thanks for the strong position of St. Andrew's Hall in equipping Christian leaders, supporting our local congregations, and fostering Christian community on the University of British Columbia campus. We join with you in prayer for the work of this General Assembly, the ministry of our Presbyterian Church in Canada, and the impact of theological education upon the church and society.
Moderator, the report has no recommendations, and a motion to adopt the report of St. Andrew's Hall and Vancouver School of Theology is moved by Lori McKay and seconded by Roberto DeSandoli.
Are there any questions, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you, Jean. Where was it? Acknowledging Jean has completed her term on the board of St. Andrew's Hall and also as a convener. Thank you, Jean. Now to the Presbyterian College. Presbyterian College Board of Governors. Report introduced by the principal of the Presbyterian College, Roland DeVries. DeVries.
Thank you, moderator. I should say that the chair of the board, Clayton Bartlett, sent his regrets to this meeting. Clayton is also coming to the end of his 6 years on the board and also as chair, convener of the board. And so I just wanted to express my gratitude to him for his encouragement and support over these past 6 years and the past 2 as chair of the board. Just wanted to highlight or speak in 3 areas very briefly this morning. The first area I want to speak about is just under the word encouragement. At the Presbyterian College, we live with many of the same challenges as congregations. Our challenges are often your challenges and yours, ours. We also live with the reality of deferred maintenance. There's just a little bit of jealousy in relation to Knox College getting out from under the burden of deferred maintenance. There are challenges to finances. There are searches for volunteers. There's uncertainty about whether programs are meeting the needs of this post-pandemic context, to name a few of the challenges that we share. As Amanda shared so openly and graciously yesterday morning, these can be anxious times for all of us in both congregation and in college. In the light of this, I just wanted to mention briefly that we held a 4-day encouragement conference just a few weeks ago at the college, at which we welcomed about 35 pastoral leaders from across the country to join us in Montreal. There was some work of equipping, yes, but mostly it wasn't about new skills. It wasn't about developing new competencies or about analyzing the needs of the post-pandemic moment. It was about taking a moment to breathe, to worship, to reflect, to pray, and to be in conversation and friendship together. It was encouraging, I think, for participants, but also for us as a college to be together with old and new friends. I mention this, first of all, because we're likely to hold that same event next year, but I also mention it because it is also our prayer as a college community, and we do pray regularly for the pastors and congregations of the Presbyterian Church in Canada. It is our prayer as a college that God will graciously bless and surprise and encourage each of you in your ministry and life with Christ. So that is encouragement. The second word is a name. The name is Adrian Langdon, and Adrian is over on this side of the room. Just wanted to introduce Adrian as the new Director of Programs in the Leadership Center of the college. He's here these few days at the assembly. If you see him around, I encourage you to introduce yourself and to meet him and hear what he has to share about the college and the Leadership Center. He's there providing support to the center, particularly in the area of our mentoring program, which is now an ecumenical program. The mentoring groups, which includes now the United and Anglican churches, provides opportunities for sharing and learning together about ministry, mutual encouragement, and prayer and conversation in a small group environment. So Adrian will be coordinating that, and we're leading that work. He'll also be leading and coordinating the work we'll be doing in the area of faith and work in the months and years ahead. It seems that one of the mistaken ideas we easily fall into as a church today is the idea that people participate in the mission of God primarily through church activities and programs. But isn't it the case that most of us participate in the mission of God through our everyday work as nurses and teachers and cleaners and mechanics and administrators and artists? That's how most of us participate in God's renewal of all things in Christ. So, among other things, in the Leadership Center, we want to help people explore and deepen their understanding of this integration. So if you have any questions about the mentoring program, about faith and work, or other programs, please have a word with Adrian. And then finally, the last word is the word French. The Presbyterian College is now in the process of extending its Master's of Theological Studies in French, which was operated as a pilot project for an initial 4-year period. The MTS is a 2-year degree in practical and missional theology that is offered in partnership with the Institut de Théologie pour la Francophonie. This program is helping Francophone pastors for the church in Quebec in the areas of missional and practical theology. At a recent colloquium of the program, students who are further along in their studies presented about their research projects, and we had presentations on faith and theater, architecture and the church, women's leadership through preaching, and catechesis, yes, catechism, as a tool of young adult faith formation in the French Quebec context. Through this program, we not only have the opportunity to form pastoral leaders and missional leaders, but in the process, to bring Reformed and Presbyterian theological education into the context of theological education among young Francophones. It's an exciting program, which has 15 in the program, which had its first 2 graduates at a convocation last month, and which has 6 new admissions for fall of 2023. And finally, on that note, we are grateful to report that this program received approval from the Association of Theological Schools, ATS, the major accrediting body for theological education in North America, and the accrediting body for all of our theological schools. So that approval represents a really important step forward for that program. So we're encouraged by that. That's all I wanted to share. Moderator, I will move, and it will be seconded by Don Walcott, also from Montreal. The report is open.
Any comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Thank you, Honor.
And so we're going to consider the report of the Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations Committee at this time. The report is introduced by Ken Strait, a member of the committee.
Morning, moderator, commissioners. The convener of Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations Committee is Matthew Sams, who could not be with us. I'd like to remind you a bit of our mandate As part of the Church Universal, we strive to listen to and learn from one another, to break down barriers which divide people and promote justice and peace in the whole human family and in the integrity of creation. Now, that's true whether the other we listen to and learn from is Baptist or Buddhist or anyone else. We get to know ourselves best when we share ourselves with others, and our denomination does a lot of sharing. It begins with you, actually, where you come from and with whomever you come in contact with. As we heard from Jeff this morning, it may be as you're writing a sermon in your local coffee cafe and people are speaking about church. How do we engage the world in the world that we live in today? We do it more formally through councils, conversations, and committees. We engage our Reformed family through conversation with other Reformed churches in Canada, through the Caribbean and North America Area Council, which is the area council for the World Communion of Reformed Churches. We engage the Christian churches through local councils of churches, the Canadian Council of Churches, the World Council of Churches, and yes, we have observer status with the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. We engage the world through our conversations and consultations with faith traditions here in Canada and around the world, and in this day and age, with those from secular organizations and societies. This past year, we sent 2 official delegates to the World Council of Churches meeting in Germany. You might remember the date changed because of the COVID pandemic, which is somewhat ironic since both of our delegates contacted COVID at the assembly. Presbyterian Connections, by the way, has an excellent article on this assembly, and we again give thanks to our 2 delegates, Amanda Curry and Lori Ransom. And by the way, Lori's been seconded to a half-time position with the World Council of Churches as a consultant for the Ecumenical People's Network. One of those things that we engage in across Canada with our ecumenical friends and partners is the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity. I'm the Presbyterian rep for that, which means that I'm on the writing and animation team, and that puts a Canadian context to the international material. Now, the material for 2024 has not yet been announced for the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity, but it's been drafted by an ecumenical team from Burkina Faso. Now, you've got to learn where it is and what is at stake with the people of that country. And that's been facilitated by the local Chemin Neuf community on the theme, "You shall love the Lord your God and your neighbor as yourself." So please, right now, put it on your agenda so you're not surprised when it comes just close after Christmas, January 18 to 25, 2024. And you can look on the PC website and they will tell you what's going on. Moderator, after serving as convener, Matthew Sands does finish his time with this committee, and the new convener will be Laura Lee Campbell. Moderator, there are no recommendations to our report. Terry Lee Hamilton moves and Brian Fraser seconds the adoption of the report for information.
Are there any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Thank you, moderator.
And thank you to Matthew Sands for finishing his term as a member and convener of the Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations Committee. Let's give him thanks. We'll now consider the report of the McClean Estate Committee. The report is introduced by the Director, Christine O'Brien.
Hi, moderator. I am not Christine O'Brien. Christine is with me. My name is Neil Ellis, Presbyterian of Lindsay Peterborough. I am a member of the McClean Estate Committee where I serve as treasurer. I'm pleased to be joined by Christine, who is our executive director. The MEC, or the McClean Estate Committee, is responsible for the management of the Crieff Hills Retreat and Conference Center, which was gifted to the Presbyterian Church out of the estate of Colonel McClean of the magazine. I'd like to take this opportunity, as this is our first in-person assembly in this post-COVID era, to thank the assembly for its support of the McClean Estate Committee and Crieff Hills over these past few years. Crieff Hills operates in the hospitality world as a retreat and conference center, a place of rest and renewal, and derives much of its revenue from room rental bookings and serving people food and providing them with hospitality. And so COVID, much like other hospitality industries, forced a dramatic shift in our operations. And we're grateful for the support of the Assembly in keeping us going during those times. And we're very excited about the future that's in front of us as we continue to find new ways to serve the church. As we do seek in serving the church and the broader community, we're also trying to be faithful to the goals and aims of Colonel McClean and his vision. And so there's a lot of work that we're doing in regards to local agriculture. We have a regenerative farm on site. If you were to come to Crieff Hills, you will see sheep and chickens. You can take honey and maple syrup home with you. If you eat at Crieff Hills, much of the food that you are eating was gathered or produced on site. And the food is amazing. The meals are absolutely fantastic at Crieff. We have a chef who is just top-notch and very, very passionate. One of the things that we have on site now are on-farm dinners, where you might go out and forage or actually pick the food that you will then be eating later in the day. And so there's an education piece that is happening there about the land and creation and our role in it as stewards. On the board level, we're excited about some of the work that we're embarking on, working on our mission, vision, and values in terms of how we can greater serve the Presbyterian Church in Canada and also our other neighbors who come and who use the facility. We'd like to acknowledge our retiring member this year, the Reverend Dr. Herb Gale, and we're excited to welcome on new members to the board to continue to do that work with us. We do have a video that we would like to share with the Assembly to show you a little bit more about Crieff, to give you an idea of what it looks like, what some of the sounds and sights are at Crieff. So please enjoy.
Welcome to Crieff Hills Retreat Centre in Puslinch, Ontario. Occupying the ancestral lands of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, and the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, it is a beautiful place, set aside for rest and renewal. Come into our schoolhouse, where nourishing meals prepared by experienced chefs change with the seasons. Special diets are easily accommodated in our custom menus. Groups of up to 100 people spend time here, learning, growing, and building community. Rooms are simple and clean, with private bathrooms and comfortable lounge areas. Being surrounded by fields and forests inspires creativity and conversation. Being here offers time and space for personal reflection, for adventure, for joy. Away from the busyness of life, guests catch their breath here, pausing to listen to the birds or simply soak in nature. Walking our large stone labyrinth is calming and restful. It's a contemplative place for those who come to pray, meditate, or discern a new path for their life. The story of Crieff Hills began when John Bain McClean, a Canadian publisher famous for McClean's magazine, donated 250 acres of his farm to the Presbyterian Church in Canada. In 1975, the founding director, Reverend Bob Spencer, began to transform the private property into an expansive retreat center. Even historic buildings have become beautiful spaces for families and small groups to gather for celebrations and laughter. Groups and individuals from all walks of life are welcome here. We are home to a growing culinary farm. That includes honey production, and maple syrup, and eggs, and gardens filled with vegetables and herbs and flowers. Great care is taken to care for the earth with organic farming methods that avoid the use of chemicals. Everything that is produced goes directly to the kitchen, where it is prepared and served to guests in beautiful, nourishing meals every day. The original barn, built in the 1830s, is now the home of a small flock of sheep. This primitive breed from Scotland is a low-impact way to control the spread of invasive plants on the property. It also inspires reflection on the Good Shepherd and offers delight in the new life of springtime. Beyond the hay fields, visitors find extensive trails through pine and hardwood forest. Special guided foraging walks yield edible plants and berries. Songbirds are good company. Changing seasons share their wisdom. Sometimes divine presence is close enough to touch. Crieff Hills is a mission of the Presbyterian Church in Canada, and it seeks to offer moments of rest and renewal, healing and transformation.
Moderator, much of the footage and the original score and composition of the video was actually done by one of the board members of the McClean Estate Committee, and so we're thankful for doing that. A nice promotional video at a very nice cost for us. We also are very thankful for the leadership that we have under Christine O'Brien as our executive director and the vision that she has working with the board and leading Crieff Hills forward into the future and how it's able to serve the denomination. We do encourage you to look us up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, as a way to keep up on what's happening at Crieff, the various different events. Sign up for an on-farm dinner. Come down, you will not be disappointed. Moderator, our report has no recommendations, and so a motion to adopt the report for information is made by myself and is seconded by Teresa McDonald-Lee.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you. So we're now at our stated hour of the International Affairs Committee. We'll consider the report presented by Donna Capper through Zoom. She's the convener.
Moderator, the International Affairs Committee report recommendations will be moved by Glenn Sampson and seconded by Laura Kavanaugh. All recommendations will be moved by consent. The consent recommendation is that recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 be adopted by consent. Moved and seconded.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor? And those opposed? The consent recommendation is adopted. Peter?
Moderator,
Oh, sorry.
that concludes the report of the International Affairs Committee. The motion to adopt the report as a whole is moved and seconded.
I'm sorry, we have an additional motion on the floor here.
Moderator Peter Kinch from the Presbyterian of East Toronto. And I'll move the microphone up as instructed by the principal clerk. So anybody shorter who comes up, you'll need to move it down. So there is an emerging issue that I would like to bring to the floor of a General Assembly. And there is a historical context to this. And I selected the International Affairs Committee report as the one where I
Peter,
introduced
can
these
you,
motions.
do you have a seconder?
I do. Brian Fraser is the seconder. So it's
Okay.
moved by me, seconded by Brian Fraser. And it has to do with a very draconian law that was introduced in Uganda, known as the 2023 Anti-Homosexuality Act. And I just would like to share a couple of things here, and then I will go through the motion if I may, moderate. So the terms of reference for the International Affairs Committee is in your report, but a short précis is that God is present as the source of all goodness and justice, and that we, as the Presbyterian Church in Canada, believe that we have a call as a church to seek justice and focus on changes in customs and practices that oppress others, that destroys human dignity. And as I prepared to come to this assembly, this act was enacted in Uganda and has been, there's been tremendous criticism around the world about this act. And what's relevant, I think, for us in the Presbyterian Church in Canada is that in 1969, at the time that Canada removed homosexual acts between two consenting adults from the Criminal Code of Canada, that the Board of Evangelism and Social Action at that time, and it was in their report, indicated support for the decriminalization of homosexual acts between two consenting adults. This act increases the penalties to homosexuals within Uganda, including the death penalty. And this came into effect in 26th of May, I believe, and shortly thereafterwards, the government of Canada issued a statement. And the first motion that's there is one to request that you write a letter to Global Affairs Canada, much like was written in 1969 expressing support, and expressing support to the Honorable Melanie Joly, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, within the Global Affairs Canada activities, that we support their efforts to stand with the LGBTQI community in Uganda and around the world, and for its call to revoke this act. And that Canada also at that time, in these Global Affairs Canada said that they would do everything possible to support the LGBTQI community in Uganda and around the world by working with local partners supporting communities in situations of vulnerability and persecution. So that's the first motion and the context behind it. I also believe that it's important, as there has been an escalation in violence towards the community, particularly my trans siblings and non-binary siblings, that the Canadian Council of Churches think about preparing and issuing a statement of unity around these matters. I believe that there's actions that may have already been started among faith leaders, and I would ask that that be something to be considered here. This builds upon the work we've done as a church in the Rainbow Communion. It builds around the work that we've done in the confession that was provided. And I think it's a tangible way to show that the words that we have meaning, and this will show that. The third part that I've identified there is that we make a donation of $25,000 to the Rainbow Railroad in support of their programs to get at-risk LGBTQI people to safety worldwide. This is a well-recognized charitable institution in Canada. And to give you context, since January 1st, 2023, according to their website, more than 4,000 people of the LGBTQI communities around the world and oppressed communities where criminalization is in 70 countries have requested support and help for relocation. They expect they will have 10,000 requests. So you might ask me where I got the $25,000 from. Well, the government of Canada provides about $10,000 to help with resettlement of refugees. The figure of $25,000 would permit support for 2 individuals. So put that in context. That's about maybe 1% of us who are in this room for those 2 individuals for life-changing opportunities. And the last one is not a mandate, it's an encouragement that congregations consider responses in their local communities to acts of hate and harm towards the LGBTQI community and the sponsorship support of refugees. It may be something that's not on your radar screen to support an LGBTQI refugee, but it's an encouragement to say, enter it into the discussion. So moderator, that's my introduction to these motions, and thank you for considering them.
Thank you. Mike 1.
Jared Miller, Presbyterian of Niagara. I speak in favor of the motion in the strongest possible terms with a quick caveat, which is that on the helpful yellow sheet here, it does point out that any motions with financial implications need to be referred to the Assembly Council for report. And so I wonder if my colleague who has moved this motion, or maybe would be friendly to including the words $25,000 referred to Assembly, or would be willing to divide the motion, pulling out the third point, and so that we can do 1, 2, and 4 here and now, and refer number 3 as per the rule.
Thank you.
Moderator Peter Kinch from East Toronto. Yes. I will pop up to say that when I see either the principal clerk or the secretary of LMA jump up, I let them have the floor for a moment. I've learned that.
I would suggest that rather than convening the Assembly Council and taking this from the budget, we would consider taking this from one of the funds that the church has. And there are a number of funds that are substantial enough to accommodate this and also have terms that would facilitate this kind of donation.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that, moderator. I just don't know if we can. The language in Book Forms 296, I don't know where our prerogative begins and ends with that. So I'd seek your ruling, moderator, on how. I'm sure the wisdom at the front has plenty more experience with that.
Moderator, just as you rule, the budget does require the General Assembly's approval, but the use of funds is overseen by a series of terms and committees that determine how funds that are held in trust can be used, and that's separate from what the General Assembly decides each year.
Sounds good. Okay. We can vote on this all at once, or does anyone want to divide these?
Vote on this all at once, or does anyone want to divide these? Vote on this all at once, or does anyone?
Moderator Terry Lee Hamilton, Presbyterian of East Toronto. I would recommend that this motion be divided with each of the individual points to be dealt with individually. I do not have a motion or seconder. Oh, I don't.
Okay, we'll divide them into how many motions? 4 motions. Seconder?
We just need 2 people saying they want. Good to go.
Need me to say that? So said.
We'll start with motion number 1. Can we get that on screen? That the moderator write to Global Affairs Canada, the Honourable Melanie Joly, to express support for the efforts of the Government of Canada to stand with the LGBTQI and community in Uganda and around the world, and for its call on the Government of Uganda to revoke the 2023 Anti-Homosexual Act. Further, to call on the Government of Canada to do everything possible to support the LGBTQ and community in Uganda and around the world by working with partners, supporting communities in situation of vulnerability and persecution. Comments? Mike 2.
Moderator Bob Ferris from the Presbyterian of East Toronto. I speak in favor strongly of this motion. When I followed this news coming out, I was deeply disturbed to hear that it was one more step towards criminalizing being who people are, and punishment of and death penalty being part of the legislation. I was also quite disturbed as I watched the Parliament in Uganda debating this issue, and I've seen it many times before, that often the arguments were couched in terms of Christian faith and morality. And I think we need to remember that as we write to government to ask for their support and condemnation of this act, that we have a role to play as well in walking together with our siblings in Christ in other parts of the world, and particularly in those countries where homosexuality is criminalized, to continue the discussion and the movement with those siblings toward a more just and fair world and understanding of the love that God has for all God's children. Thank you.
Okay. I understand that the young people would like to vote, advisory vote.
Moderator, maybe just as
Yeah.
the original mover, I just wanted to provide a slight clarification. There was a question of whether we should add 2S to this because that's something that we frequently use in Canada. And I purposefully omitted the 2S from the motion because that's something that Canada, and as best I can tell, maybe Australia picks up. And so I thought I was trying to follow what the Government of Canada was doing in this motion. So I wanted to provide that clarification as the original mover.
Thank you very much. Okay, for advisory vote from the R's. Is there a vote? All those in favor, sorry. Any opposed? Commissioners, you have been advised. Okay. For the vote, okay. Any further questions about the motion? If not, those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Recommendation number 2. That the moderator work with the Canadian Council of Churches to prepare and issue a unity statement by Christian leaders in Canada in connection with ending harm and violence towards the LGBTQI and community. It's been moved and seconded. Any comments? All in favor? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We forgot to ask the R's. Sorry. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Commissioners have been advised. Okay, we'll do it again. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Recommendation number 3, that a donation of $25,000 be made to the Rainbow Railroad in support of their programs to get at-risk LGBTQ and people to safety worldwide. Mike 1.
I speak strongly in favor of making a donation to this. We could also, Mark Chang, Edmonton, Lakeland. I'm thinking on my feet, so my apologies. We can make donations closer to home, however. I am part of Rainbow Refuge in Edmonton and part of the Edmonton Mennonite Center for Newcomers. And through them, we've sponsored 2 LGBTQ refugees, and they've lived in my home. and I'm just realizing, and I should have talked to Peter about this earlier, that with that, we could sponsor in Edmonton 2 more, and then we could report back who those people were. So, like, not details about it, but we could let you know some more things. So I wonder if we could maybe negotiate, like, I don't want to speak on behalf of that organization yet, but a donation of $25,000 made to an LGBTQ refugee sponsorship group could be, or divide.
You might need to make an amendment.
So I would amend that make an amendment that, can you help me out? Okay.
So there's Roberto DeSandley, Presbyterian North Saskatchewan.
We can't, can you get to the mic, please?
Roberto DeSandley, Presbyterian of Northern Saskatchewan, just trying to help. Can we clone essentially the motion, 25,000 to the Rainbow Railroad and 25,000 to
Edmonton Mennonite Center for Newcomers, Rainbow Refuge at AMCA.
Okay, moved by Mark, seconded
by Mark Chang, seconded by Roberto DeSandley.
Just give us a second while we get this up on PCBIS so everybody can see it. And I'll get the motion coordinators.
It's going to be on the screen shortly.
The motion is that $25,000 additional to the Rainbow.
Apparently, additional. Or we could split it. I'm open to anything, but
Okay, well,
but I'll say double it.
We need clarity on the amendment, please.
So the amendment as now says an additional 25,000.
To where?
To the Rainbow Refuge at the Edmonton Mennonite Center for Newcomers.
Thank you.
I'm told I'm out of order.
Okay, the motion is up on the screen. The amendment, including the amendment. Okay, so we will discuss the amendment. Who was there first? Number 3?
My response has to do with another aspect of the.
Can you get closer to the mic, please?
My respect, it's just about in my Adam's apple.
I'm sorry, can you identify yourself?
Yes,
I'm
I'm David
sorry.
Christiani from the Presbyterian of Montreal.
Thank you.
And my comment has to do with another item of the motion. I'm prepared to wait for that to be modified.
Okay. Mike 2.
My name is Catherine Twynham. I'm from the Presbyterian of West Toronto. I just have a quick comment. I'm not sure if it's in order to just mention this now. The gentleman who introduced the original motion mentioned that it was not until 1969 that the Canadian government removed criminality from this whole group of people. I was employed by the Department of Immigration from 1970 to 1978. And I just wanted to comment, people might be interested to know that it was not removed from the list of prohibited people coming into Canada until 1978, when the Immigration Act was rewritten. And the immigration regulations were also rewritten. So the whole time that I was employed by immigration, I was an immigration officer. I was a special inquiry officer as well. The whole time I was employed there, homosexuality was considered a prohibited class. And it's amazing to me that we have come such a long way. We are now asking the Canadian government to facilitate the entry of people being persecuted for it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike 4?
Henry Reiners, Presbyterian of Grey Bruce Maitland. Just a question on the clarification of the additional $25,000. We were initially talking about $25,000 coming out of the, as I understand it, the Presbyterian Church budget. Is this an additional $25,000 or is this new fundraising?
The money won't be coming out of the budget, not out of the annual budget. It comes out of funds that the church holds and are discerned about and spent differently than the annual budget is determined.
Okay, so then I'll revise my question and ask, is that additional $25,000 coming from the same place? So we're doubling this to $50,000 coming out of that?
That's if this motion is passed, it would be a total of $50,000 coming out of probably a constellation of funds that have terms that would support it.
Okay. Mike 2?
Bob Ferris, Presbytery of East Toronto. I want to support the amendment. I believe, though, that it also points to the fact that there are many different groups that we can work with to support LGBTQI+ refugees. St. Andrews in Toronto has worked with Rainbow Railroad to support a refugee. It's also possible to do that through PWS&D. I don't think we should forget that. And that PWS&D has been supported over the years of LGBTQI+ refugees. Thank you.
Mike 1? Thank you, Bob.
Jared Miller, Niagara. I'm reminded that last night, moderator, we spoke about the importance of prophetic imagination and the importance of on the final point, as the clerk shared with us, was the ability and the willingness to take risks. And so while the General Secretary is at the front, I wonder if he could provide some clarity or some guidance, how big can we make this number? Because this feels important.
While we're at it, NIMC, no, I'm just kidding.
I'm being advised to tell you we could take it from the pension plan.
Just Jared's.
Okay, go back to number one. Did you finish?
I should answer the question. Yeah. I can't really answer that question because the church is very fortunate to have a number of very large funds that have accumulated over the years, and they have very flexible terms, which allows us to do any number of things. The funds that we have certainly accommodate this, and the General Assembly will advise us on what to do. We can accommodate this and whatever the Assembly decides.
Then I speak strongly in favor of the motion.
Number one again.
Roberto DeSanley, Presbytery of Northern Saskatchewan. I just want to briefly motivate the motion to say that I'm in favor of it as a seconder, and that I think all of the General Assemblies that I've been a part of, and as the only non-retired minister in my presbytery, as I know many of you are, I get to go to a lot of them, and I know that human sexuality has been a topic of conversation at all of the ones that I've been to, and often a fraught conversation. And I would just like to encourage the Assembly that this is an opportunity for us to come together in a very positive way, regardless of theological differences about the position of human sexuality, to support the humanity of all people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moderator John Borthwick, Waterloo, Wellington. I do want to support the recommendation. I'm wondering if there could be a question for clarification. Is there a body, would it be International Affairs or somewhere else, that we could refer this this intention, which is wonderful, but I'm always a little concerned when a large group of people just decides, it could go here, it could go there. How about this much? How about that much? Is there a group of people who could advise? Like as a tiny, I'd be open to creating an amendment that would add a tiny bit of wording that might say, this is the intention of General Assembly, and however, we would leave it up to a body to advise where best it could be spent.
Yes, Ian, please.
If the Assembly decided to do that and leave some latitude, there certainly is a group of people that would come together, probably from the Life and Mission Agency, PWS&D, part of the Life and Mission Agency, and International Affairs, to speak with probably the mover of the motion and some others to decide how best to use those funds in the most effective way.
So I would humbly beg the moderator or the court, what extra words, and would the mover and seconder entertain that? As a friendly amendment, I was thinking.
You make a motion to refer?
I don't want to make a motion to refer. I just want to add a couple of words to say that it be offered. You can help. Nigel can help.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Nigel Parker, Presbytery of Quebec. I too, like my colleague Mr. Borthwick, would want to support the intention and the goodwill, and says my concern for this in $50,000 added on to that, moderator. My concern is not only with the financial cost, but the cost to other good intentions that could also call upon the funds. And it's my concern that if we were giving this money to this particular cause, good and worthwhile and immediate and intense as it is, we might also be denying the opportunity using $50,000 for other causes that actually haven't emerged on the floor of the General Assembly, but we would also come on there. So if there is some kind of mechanism, such as Mr. Borthwick has amended, I'm happy to second Mr. Borthwick's amendment that this should be, that the intention of the General Assembly should be referred to P, W, S, and D or some other board such as there. So I would be happy to. But does that fit in with? But I don't know, moderator, if that would fit in with Mr. Borthwick's intention.
Yes, please.
And Nigel, it doesn't. I'm sorry. It was helpful, but I think it's different. I'm understanding the principle. Oh, sorry. What are you called again? General Secretary. I'm understanding the General Secretary to say that if this passes, that I'm assuming the Life and Mission Agency, other partners would figure out the best way to do this.
Yes, you could, I suppose, amend the wording to say that the Life and Mission Agency and the International Affairs Committee work together to allocate $50,000 towards the work, I'm making this up, John, of helping to settle LGBTQI people in Canada through refugee support agencies.
I would, with those words, if anybody was taking them down, because you'll have to repeat them again. I would offer that as a friendly amendment if that is truly the intention of the mover and seconder.
Okay, we're just figuring out a few things, the wording, etc.
Just,
okay, Mark?
Moderator, just to say that the mover and seconder of the amendment that we're debating agrees with that. We would be.
We're going to write something out and get it to our business committee, to get it to PC Biz, so we know. We're just going to write something out here so that we know what we're looking at.
Who should I say it to?
Just send it to Doug. Just write it. Because the mover and seconder are in support of that.
Are the Yars still in here? We're going to be asking for their advisory vote.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sort of, it's got it's one of those things. Framework gets in there and it's like, all right. Gotta get there before Jared does. Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Yep. Where are you?
Just out of safe, yeah, like, would they be safe next door or?
Okay, while we're waiting, I'll teach you a little Cree song.
All
Okay.
right.
It's Dorothy's song. Okay. Dow wow beastikwe. Beastikwe. Okay, where are you, Dorothy? I hear you singing there. Okay. Tawau beastikwe. Tawau beastikwe. It means welcome, come in. Okay. Tawau beastikwe. Okay. Okay, can we sing that now? Tawau beastikwe. Okay, the next one. Nimi wasting. Okay. Gawapamitan. Nimi wasting. And together. Nimi wasting. Nimi wasting. Gawapamitan. It means welcome, come in.
Welcome, come in.
I am so glad.
I am so glad
to be seeing you.
to be seeing you.
Welcome, come in.
Welcome, come in.
Welcome, come in. Oops, sorry. I am so glad. I am so. No, now we sing together this part. I am so glad. I am so glad to be seeing you. Oh, wow. Now you learned to record.
Warm up the band.
How are they doing? You need more Crieff?
Absolutely.
So when someone comes to your house and you're inviting them in for tea, you say, "Tawau, Bistigwe, come inside, Bistigwe." Okay, I guess our Cree lesson is over. Okay, Ian, please go ahead.
Okay. Moderator, I think that there is a revised motion that the movers and seconders are ready to put before the court to consider.
Okay. How many know what powwow is? How many know what fancy dance is? How many know what fancy dance men's category is? There's two fancy dances. One is for women, one is for men. The men mimic the horse, the women mimic the butterfly. There you go. Now we're ready for the Hey, Ian. Okay, so we're ready for the motion. We're trying to figure out if this is an amendment or.
Okay. I, as the original mover and seconder, but I'll look to, I consider this to be a friendly amendment to the original motion in terms of what we were doing. It's changed the monetary amount. That's the mechanism for how to dispense it. Peter Kinch from Presbyterian of East Toronto.
Okay.
So thank you.
So the motion on the floor is the amendment to the original motion, right? That the International Affairs Committee and the Life and Mission Agency Committee work together to allocate $50,000 to agencies that help to settle people who identify as LGBTQI+ and seek refuge in Canada. Been moved and seconded. And Mike 2.
Hi, my name is Nicole Reed from the Presbytery of Niagara. I am wondering if the money might go farther if we consider moving people to safety rather than moving them to Canada.
I want to answer that.
Maybe as a friendly amendment, I don't know.
Do you want me to? These are both very complicated and complex geopolitical situations. I couldn't speak, and I don't know who could speak to whether or not it would go further, supporting flight to safety rather than settlement in Canada. I expect that some of that work is already being done through other channels, and that we do have capacities and congregations in Canada to help to help settle people seeking refuge. I don't know that there's, it's probably 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Maybe the mover has some information.
Maybe if I could, Peter Kinch, Presbyterian of East Toronto, maybe just as a clarification, I think I would look at this as that we're sending $50,000 to agencies who help with these activities. Our $50,000 may in fact allow them to reallocate other $50,000 to something else. And they do have a number of programs and activities. To me, the important part here is we're not telling them that they're to bring refugees. We're sending them money to help them in their activities, some of which is settlement, but some of which is also creating safe refuge for individuals in persecuted countries on a temporary basis for them. So I think this gives the flexibility, the question that was posed here about that.
Thank you. Mike 4.
David, guess I haven't loud enough voice without the mic. David Monroe, Seaway, Glengarry. I was just having a comment for the lady's last motion. I'm just wondering if you limit it to Canada, at least you have control. If you are moving them to safety, how do you guarantee you have any control of the safety part? Just a comment.
Okay, thank you. Mike 1.
Young Cho, West Toronto. I'm wondering if, in the sentiment of all this, that if we just take out in Canada and we give the discretion to these 2 life and missionage, it might solve the problem.
Moderator, I'd just like to echo what was said by the mover. The money is going to organizations in Canada that help people who it's to the agencies that are in Canada that help to settle people who identify as LGBTQI and seek refuge. Maybe we could just reorganize
exactly.
the in Canada part.
Moderator, may I speak, please?
Okay, number 3.
David Christiani from Montreal. The reason why I waited was because I wanted to address our public accountability as Assembly and also the decision about making a money decision on the spot like this. I would say in response, and notwithstanding the rules that are on our card, it's my understanding that the Book of Forms is really there for our guidance as to best practices. It's not necessarily a law or a legal document. So I would espouse that we are within our rights to make a decision of a financial nature at this time for 2 reasons. We've heard very cogent arguments and discussion of the issue itself and of the urgency of the situation, and also because we've just heard about this event very recently. This is a punctual request. This is a first step. So I do believe that we are well. Oh, and third is that we've heard from from Reverend McDonald that there is money available for these purposes at our disposal. So I think that we are right in going ahead with this. I hear other things being added. If it were my preference, I would say vote on this, and then let's not refer it, but let's let the agencies that are there come to our aid. I happen to be a stewardship convener at my church. I'm excited about this because I think I could go back to my congregation and say, we need help with refugees. And I bet they're going to step right up. So in any case, that aside, I do believe that we're within our rights and on the right path making this decision.
Thank you very much. One last word, and then we're going to go to question.
Mark Cheng, Edmonton Lakeland, and I speak in favor of the motion as is, just so that people know how high the need in Canada already is. In my work as LGBTQ missioner, was supporting people who came to Canada from Uganda, making the refugee claim here. And if they're doing it here, they have absolutely no supports. And that out of that work came Rainbow Refuge that we're doing in Edmonton. So it's already so much in Canada, it would be used in this moment. We need it.
Thank you. Is it related to?
Yeah.
Okay.
So moderator Brian Fraser, Presbyterian of Westminster, conferring with Peter as a seconder of this motion, we're happy to take this as a friendly amendment. Therefore, it becomes the motion. We don't have to do 2 votes.
Okay, thank you. Oh dear.
Moderator, hate to tell Dr. Fraser he's wrong.
I'm used to it.
We need to vote on this as an amendment, and then we'll vote on the motion as amended. Thank you. The amendment is being moved by Mark Chang, seconded by Roberto De Sandali. Right? Okay, thank you. So I think you want to call for the.
Okay. And now we want to hear from the Yars. Are you in favor? Okay. The commissioners have been advised. Are you ready to vote? All in favor? Whoa. The amend, oh, okay. Any opposed? One opposed. The amendment carries. Now this motion as amended. The Yars, are you in favor? Any opposed? Now the commissioners, are you in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. And now we're back to motion number 4. Number 2.
Thank you, Moderator.
Oh, here
Peter
it is.
Kinch, Presbyterian of East Toronto. This one I'm not going to speak an awful lot about, but as I said earlier in my preamble, it's not a mandate, it's an encouragement to consider responses in your local communities and sponsorship support. The one part that I would flag is Bob Ferris, now Commissioner, indicated the work that's done at St. Andrew's King Street in Toronto and support they provided locally. I will also share that Armour Heights in Toronto has provided financial support to the 519, which is an organization that works within the LGBTQI community. And in particular, it's in support of settlement activities for refugees that have arrived in Toronto. And I will say that it's one thing to get the individuals out of the country and into a new place, but there's a whole series of activities that then needs to go on, and Mark's nodding his head, that we're aware of. And so this is a safe place for people to go that have lived in under systemic oppression. And there would be fearful moments. And so I just wanted to say, this is why I think there's also a need to consider a community response. And so with that, that's.
Okay, thank you. Mike 3.
Moderator Angela J. Clooney, Presbyterian of Pickering. I want to speak in support of this recommendation and state that in the province of Ontario, currently we are working towards encouraging nonprofit organizations to address community needs by improving infrastructure, technology, community space, facility programs, and services for situations such as this. So Ontario's strengthening supports to combat and create safer communities, especially in religious institutions and in our community spaces, has been encouraged. And they are currently giving out grants to congregations within our province to help us to do this very item. So I would speak in support of this recommendation and encourage each of us to look and see if there's ways that our province, our cities, that we can continue to work together to do this important work.
Okay, the advisory vote in favor? Opposed? Commissioners have been advised. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. They were waiting to get back to the convener. Donna, are you ready to move the motion or the report as a whole?
Moderator, I am having difficulty hearing the entirety of what has been passed and not passed. At this point, I believe the report of the International Affairs Committee is completed and the motion to adopt the report as we have presented it as a whole is moved and seconded.
Okay, any further comments? And can we have the vote from the Yars, please? All in favor? Any opposed? Oh, no. Okay, number 2.
Robert Royal, Oak Bridges Presbytery. Just for clarification, the lady has said our report as a whole as presented, as opposed to our report as a whole as amended. I'm just wondering if we could have some clarity on that, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just need to have report as a whole and report as a whole. So I think we'll record this as the report as a whole. Thank you.
Okay. So, all in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Terry Lee is going to give us some announcements. So I just see that Sederunt is at the meeting.
Moderator. Again, there is some work of some of the committees here at the Assembly. So the committee to confer is asked to meet immediately after the Sederunt, and members will meet over here to my left. Some of you may have noted or noticed when we have ended a Sederunt, there's been a presentation on the screens. As you know, we have not had displays this year at the Assembly, but what we did instead was prepare this very quick little loop of information about the standing committees. And one of the reasons why we are here is because of the work of the standing committees. So at the end of the Sederunt, I invite you to take a look, but also we're going to show that again just at the beginning of the Sederunt, just as people are coming into the building. It won't be part of the Sederunt. This just says the work of the various standings committees and the number of people who are involved, not just in those committees, but then in all the various committees that are there. The other thing which the communications department has done is just prepared a postcard-like element stating the number of standing committees that we have. So they're just going to put those around on the table over lunch for your information. We are looking now more seriously at travel and getting people back to the airport. We know that there are some of you who are departing tomorrow. Please ensure that you have put a check mark beside your travel information. If your travel information has changed, you can add it there, but may I also encourage you to speak to Marjorie Copeland. And the main thing is not just to move yourself around, because we got to make sure we have people in the various groups so that everyone can get on the bus at the right time. This afternoon at lunch, Friends of St. Andrew's Hall are invited to join with others from St. Andrew's. They are going to be having a luncheon in McNally Hall. For those of you who are first-time commissioners, you know where it is.
if you've looked at the building, it's on the walkway into the older part of the campus here. Then this evening at 5:30, friends and those associated with Knox College, there will be a reception in that same location. As you know, this evening is a free evening. People are free to go off and do whatever you wish. But there's been one suggestion, and it was also in the resource tab. There is a concert at the Church of St. David's this evening, and it's the Vancouver Orpheus Choir. Some of you may know Glenn Davis. That choir has traveled to the East Coast. They are putting on a performance this evening, and that might be one of your options. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. And they do put on a good show. Did see them. And Glenn Davis says, just tell them all to come on over. Thank you very much. We're going to adjourn now for lunch. Enjoy your lunch. Enjoy your company. Lord bless you.